today's session discussion will be on audiolingual and bilingual method of teaching English language. So let's get started with the audiolingual method. Background: the audiolingual method, it was developed in US during the Second World War. At that time, the US government, they found it a great necessity to set up a special language training program to supply the war with language personnel. Therefore, the government commissioned American universities to develop foreign language programs for military personnel. So this is the background of this method. The audiolingual method, it was widely used in the 1950s and 1960s. And the emphasis was not on the understanding of words, but on the acquisition of structures and patterns in common everyday dialogue, everyday language. And this teaching technique, it was initially called the army method because it was made for army personnel and was the first to be based on linguistic theory and behavioral psychology. Based on Skinner's behaviorism theory, it is assumed that a human being can be trained using a system of reinforcement. And correct behavior receives positive feedback while errors receive negative feedback. And emphasis is on the acquisition of patterns in common everyday dialogue. So these patterns, they are obtained first, then repeated and tested until the responses given by the student in the foreign language are automatic. Next is main features. Now 1. Each language skill, listening, speaking, reading and writing, is treated and taught separately in the audiolingual method. And the skills of writing and reading are not neglected, but the focus remains on listening and speaking skills. Writing and reading skills will be secondary. Dialogue is the main features of audiolingual syllabus, and these are the chief means of presenting language items. They provide learners an opportunity to practice, mimic, and memorize parts of language. And the patterns, drills are used as an important technique and essential part of this method for language teaching and learning. The language laboratory, this was introduced as an important teaching aid at that time, and mother tongue was not given much importance in audiolingual method of teaching English language. The objective of audiolingual method of teaching English is to teach the student correct pronunciation and grammar. And it is through this method of teaching that the students are provided the ability to respond quickly and accurately in speech situations and knowledge of sufficient vocabulary to use with grammar patterns. And it is believed that learning structure or grammar is the starting point for the students according to audiolingual method. Next is technique used in audiolingual method. First one is dialogue memorization. The students will have to memorize the dialogues given by the teacher. And then second is a repetition drill. The student will have to repeat those dialogues again and again. In this way, repetition drill is done. Then the chain drill, the different methods of practicing English language and substitution drill can also be practiced by the student, and question answer drill, then transformation drill and grammar games can be practiced by the teacher. Next is its advantages. The first one is listening and speaking skills are emphasized, and especially the former grossly developed. The former means the first one, the speaking skill, is emphasized more. And the use of audio-visual aids is effective in vocabulary teaching. The method is just as functional and easy to execute for a larger group. You want to teach a large number of students, the crowded classes, this method is useful. And correct pronunciation and structures are emphasized and acquired in this method. Next is disadvantages of audiolingual method. First one, it does not pay sufficient attention to the spontaneous communication skills, and only language form is considered while meaning is neglected. The main focus will be on the structure and the patterns of the language, only on the language form, and the meaning of the language is neglected in audiolingual method. Then equal importance is not given to all the four skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing. Next point, it is a teacher-dominated method, and it is also a mechanical method since it demands pattern practice, drilling and memorization over functional learning. The mechanical drilling is done by the teacher. They keep on practicing, memorizing and drilling the dialogues. And the learner is in this method a passive role. They have a passive role and they have a little control over their learning. They are in a directed role and have little control over the material studied by the teacher or the method the teacher is using for the study. So these are some of the disadvantages. Next method is bilingual method of teaching English language. The bilingual, what is bilingual? The word bilingual applies to a person who knows two languages. The first language of a child is that of his parents, it's called mother tongue, but a second language is learned either for purposes of education or because of historical, political or social reasons. We can define bilingual as a true bilingual is the person who can jump from the language to another easily, one language to another easily, and talk fluently about any situation in either the mother tongue or the target language with equal ease, comfortably. So in this method, the mother tongue is used to achieve the target of English language. And the use of two languages are done in this method of teaching. That means the mother tongue and target language, these are used in teaching learning process. The mother tongue is used in explaining difficult words or complex sentences to the student. And this method is based on the similarities and differences that exist between two languages. It is a midway approach between grammar cum translation method and direct method of teaching English language. Next is principles. What are the principles of bilingual method of teaching English language? Number one, use of mother tongue only to convey the meaning of words, sentences and idioms. So there is a restricted use of mother tongue. It is used only to convey the meaning of words, sentences and idioms. Mother tongue saves the time of the teacher in creating situations, as the teacher is doing in the direct method of teaching English language. Mother tongue is used only in early stages and gradually it is dropped. It is used only in the initial stage of language learning and gradually it is dropped by the teacher. Time saved from creating situations can be utilized by the teacher for giving more pattern to the students. The more practice can be given to the students. And sentence is the unit of teaching in this method of teaching language. Next is advantages of bilingual method. The first one is it saves time. This method is called time-saving method because the time is saved from the botheration of creating situations in order to convey the meaning of difficult words and phrases in English as is done in the direct method. So instead, the teacher explains the meaning in the mother tongue to the students and the time of the teacher as well as the student can be saved. Number second, this method ensures accuracy. This method puts more emphasis on the accuracy of the language. The meaning of English sentences and words explained in mother tongue and becomes clear to the students. And when the meaning of new words are explained in the mother tongue of the student, it becomes easier for them to learn. So hence bilingual method of teaching English, it leads to accuracy in learning. Number next, it suits an average teacher. Method is very suitable for even for an average teacher. An average teacher finds the direct method difficult to use, but in this method, the teachers are at ease to create atmosphere and convey the meaning of words and phrases in students' mother tongue. An average teacher can use this method successfully and effectively. Next point, not much expensive. This method is not very costly, not much expensive, and direct method requires many objects to create situations, but the bilingual method, it needs little equipment and it's suited to all types of schools. So hence this method is less costly than direct method, which needs a lot of illustrative material for creating situations. Next point is natural process of teaching. In the bilingual method, the natural process of teaching is followed. The natural process of teaching language is listening, speaking, reading and writing. And this method is followed in bilingual method. Next point is it makes conversation easier. So the students have got the clear idea of language, so the conversation becomes easier for the student. And it also suits all types of the students, whether they are average, below average or above average. This method is very suitable for all types of students. And it also provides the better ability of understanding the English language. It gives proper training for different language learning skills, listening, speaking, reading and writing. So these are the advantages of bilingual method. Next, disadvantages. Number one, it diverges the attention of the learners at initial stage. It may be possible that if the teacher fails to handle the bilingual method properly, it may degenerate into a translation method and the attention of the learners at the initial stage can be diverged. And number 2, students can find it difficult to understand the contrast between the features of two languages. Students may get confused when the two languages are being contrasted. They may not be able to understand the contrast between the features of English and of the mother tongue, especially at the initial stage. Number 3, the teacher may not be good in both languages. The teacher of English may not be good in both languages. Whatever mother tongue he uses in the class while teaching English may not be up to the mark, and it may leave bad impression of the teacher on the learner. So this is another disadvantage of bilingual method. Number next, if not handled properly, this method may get generated into translation method, and use of mother tongue while teaching, it spoils the continuity and fluency of the language. And a few students of class may be more attentive towards the mother tongue sounds, and in this way the pronunciation may become defective. And student may form a habit of learning everything by filtration to mother tongue. Next point, it is not a useful method at the higher stage of education. The higher stages, the direct method is more useful than the bilingual method of teaching English language. So these were the disadvantages. Next is difference between bilingual and translation method. Bilingual method. In bilingual method, use of mother tongue in a restricted manner. But in translation method, make use of mother tongue excessively. It leads to excessive use of mother tongue. Number 2, this method generates interest in the learning of the language. And in translation method, sometimes the literal translation of the words of foreign language is impossible, and it mars the beauty of the language, and the students lose the interest. Number 3, improved method of teaching. Bilingual method is the improved method of teaching English language. And the translation method, not much improvement. It is an old method of teaching English language. Use of mother tongue to explain difficult sentences and words in bilingual method. In translation method, the teacher uses mother tongue liberally, freely. He tries to give the literal translation of English words and sentences. Next point. Students have greater practice in speaking skill in bilingual method. But in translation method, pupils have less practice in speaking English, and this is its biggest disadvantage of translation method. Number next, greater understanding of English on the part of the student in bilingual method. In translation method, students have less practice in speaking English and their understanding is also less. Bilingual method is more stable for regional language speakers, and translation method not stable for regional language speakers. And a lot of practice given to the student in the drill of sentence pattern in the bilingual method. And in translation method, students are not given any practice in the drill of sentence pattern. This is another disadvantage of translation method. That's all for today. See you later in my next session. Till then, thank you very much.